Thank you for joining me. As I
Yeah.
was saying before, our technical difficulties. Paranormal is a bit of a passion of mine. I've been through a lot of experiences myself. So
Ooh.
to be able to like talk to someone else about it is a joy because I'm always trying to look for someone else to talk to about their experiences. So yeah, do you want to maybe dive into some of your paranormal experiences?
Yeah, but I also want to hear yours too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We can share both of them.
Um, yeah, so I mostly have, well, as far as I can understand or for what they are, like I mostly have interactions with animals. Um, I'm I'm a little bit on the fence about whether or not I'm actually like communicating with spirit, like human spirits, just based on conversation. Like I didn't think I was, but then based on some conversations that I've had recently, I'm like, oh, actually, maybe I am. So there's some things I can definitively say, yes, I've had this experience, and others where I can be like, oh, maybe not. So it'd be nice to hear your perspective and how you sort of, you know, end up communicating with them or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
story.
Well, for myself, I definitely feel like spirit, human or other, will present itself in the way that you feel most comfortable or able to recognize it. So I've had spirit guides throughout my life who've shown up in different forms.
Mhm.
So like the that fairy queen that I had met, I feel like that was my dear spirit that had been like poking at me, but I was so obsessed with the fae at the time, I couldn't really like recognize it. Like she had the horns of the stag and all this stuff that indicated this, but at the time I was like, that's a crown, and I just met a fairy queen. So definitely, I think they just kind of present in the way that you can best understand at the time. So maybe you have been interacting with like past loved ones or something, and you recognize them as a animal spirit.
Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Well, so I'll tell you the first time that I consciously, okay, so when I was a kid, I was one of those kids, I had like a book and it was like how to ghost hunt. And I was always on the search to see a ghost. Of course, never did because I was terrified. Like, also, I was both intrigued and terrified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was always something that I was like, I hope one day in my life I see, a ghost. and and so the day came when I was in college, and I went to college, and this is like the story that you hear. This is the haunted story that you hear all the time. So I was going to school in England, and I was in the our school was in the middle of the country, and and there were like it was in a village. Our school was on top of a hill that was in a village of 500 people. Like it was a tiny,
Wow.
tiny place. And at night you couldn't, there were no street lights. So like you had to carry a torch or a flashlight. Um, and there were and you could put your hand out in front of your face like this and not be able to see it. It was so dark on some
That's
nights.
scary.
Yeah, it was very, very dark. So one night, and there was a graveyard also on our school property because our school inhabited an estate. It wasn't built as a school. It was like, oh, this property is open, so we're going to turn it into a school. So before that, it had been some kind of estate that I don't remember the particular history of it, but there was a graveyard um, on this property, um, and there also had been stories of people seeing ghosts in the area. Anyway, one particular night, it was around 9:30. I was in the library, which was at the top of the hill, and it was one of those really dark nights. The library closed at that time. So the options were there was an on campus pub, which I didn't really, that wasn't my jam. And so I decided to go back to my dorm, which was at the bottom of a hill. And it was about a 15-minute walk from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And there was one road that went, like dirt road that went from the bottom of the hill over the top to the other side, right? So And then there were like two dirt walkways on either side, but there was also canopied with trees like this. So this particular night, it was a foggy night, and and
Creepy.
yeah, there was fog like rolling over the hill and down, like over and down the hill. And I didn't have a torch with me or a flashlight. I didn't actually have one. I kind of relied on other people's because I was generally, you're around, like you're on a campus, so there's generally other people around. But this night there wasn't. So I started walking to my dorm, and I decided to walk in the middle of the road because I had the most light, because it was a little bit creepy trying to pick your way like down the dirt paths next to the road with trees.
Yeah.
So I was walking down the road, and there was rolling fog as I was walking, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I felt this chill like run down my spine. It was just like, huh, and I stopped, and I was like, I just, something compelled me to turn around. So I turned around, and at that moment there was like this patch of fog that was rolling towards me, and in it I saw what I thought was a wolf coming right at me. And I was like, and then it disappeared. I mean, it was so fast. It was like, I don't know, 3 to 5 seconds, like, and I remember standing there just feeling like I didn't know what to do. And I stood there for a few minutes being like, did I just see a ghost? Like, what the hell was that? It was so like fast, and I was flabbergasted because I was like, that was it? That was the ghost experience? Like,
That was the one.
that was it. And I turned around and I was like, I didn't just see things. Like, I actually felt that. I felt it, like something made me turn around. I felt it run up and down my spine. Like something made me turn around. It wasn't that, like, it was there before I saw it. My visual of it was the last part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I know that I wasn't just seeing things. Like I felt that. And that was the first time that I was like, holy shit, there's something to this. Like
There's something there.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
you know,
that's crazy.
yeah, it was cool. It was so validating. Like, like, because there's always like the question. I mean, at least for me, when I talk about any of this stuff, when you're dealing with the mystery, there's always a question of like, is this real?
Yeah.
And you have these instances that perk up, that bubble up and are like, confirm, yes, this is real,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those moments where it was like, okay, cool, good.
Yeah. Cool. Now I get it. It's real. I don't have to
Yeah.
question it anymore. That's like what I picture to be like something of like a movie where like it's just like bursts out of like the fog and it's like what a big thing and then it's gone.
I
That's
know. It's like a story, it's the like quintessential ghost story, you know.
definitely. Do you have any like connection to wolves or anything like that? Is that something you feel called to at all?
I mean, I had a wolf poster in my room growing up. That was the only, I mean, in the way that they're endangered, I feel protective of them. But no, I've never felt like a deep, huge connection to wolves. Um,
Huh.
I don't, but I have a deep connection towards animals in general, like like an embrace of like, I love you, even if I don't understand you, or even if you freak me out a little bit, I still love you.
Yeah. Oh, what a fabulous story. That's like something of fairy tales. I kind of like want to dive more into what that plot line could have been.
I know. So I've always wondered like what, I don't know, like, was this a real wolf or dog that happened to live in the area at some point? What happened to it?
Mm.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, those are going to be questions that I'll never be able to answer, um, but it was a cool experience, sort of opening that the territory for me, because I've had other experiences since.
Hmm.
um, which I'm happy to talk about too. But I want you to tell a story.
Okay. I had so many weird ones, but I feel like it's been like just an experience of like what I'm open to at the time. When I was really little, I would just have like this very clear knowing of something, and I would get up and like run around and yell about it, and no one would listen to me, of course, because I am a 10-year-old freaking out about something that hasn't happened. um, so like the first time really like knowing something has happened is because my uncle came to me in my dreams, and I just knew he had passed.
Mhm.
And I was like, we're gonna get a call from the coroner. I didn't even know what a coroner was that time. I was like, we're just gonna get a call from a man, and he's gonna be bad, and it's about my uncle. And I was up for about 2 hours trying to convince my grandma to call my uncle and see what was happening. And then within that time frame of me trying to go back to bed, we got that call confirming that he had passed away in his car in his garage. It had been running and someone had shut the door. And so that was like one of the first experiences that I remember, um, other than that Faye one. And that kind of like opened it up to me wanting to close it down, because I would have another instance and another instance where I would know something and it would freak me out, and I'd always be in this like state of anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, so then years went by, and I really wouldn't have much of anything until I moved out of my grandparents' home. And then I would have this really weird experience with, which I could only explain as what would feel like a succubus experience, if you are familiar with that.
I mean,
Um,
not the experience in and of itself, but I do know what a succubus is. Yeah.
yeah. So I had moved into this basement suite with my boyfriend at the time, and the basement suite was great. It was really bright and open, but towards the back of the apartment, it was not my favorite to be around. I wouldn't even look at that area when I was by myself. And you'd like go past our kitchenette, we'd have our bathroom, and then the two bedrooms on the back end. And I never wanted to go back there. And I had my best friend move in at the time, and she was living with me, and she always had some type of something following her. So I always just assumed when things would like kind of like pick up energy wise, it would just be something around her. Um, However, I was by myself at the time, and I do find like they kind of follow her along, so I never really had anything linger. But I was in my room and I was just exhausted from work. So I went to have a nap, and I woke up, and I guess it would be what you explain as like almost like a sleep paralysis feeling where you didn't have like control, like you're conscious. Um, but it was very invasive, if you understand what I'm putting down there. It felt like something was inappropriate about to happen, and I was completely alone. I was locked in my house. Um, and that like went on for like an hour. I couldn't like really move. And I got up and I was able to finally move after about an hour, and I wouldn't sleep in that room anymore. And later on to find out, we had to ask the people who own the house upstairs, and they ended up telling us that a person who's on like the predator list lived there before. He used to own the house. So that was like terrifying. So I had to get someone to come and like cleanse the place. And I didn't live there for very long afterwards. Like we even had an experience with my best friend. It was like child hands on her lower back, like
Mm.
trying to like grab onto her, and like that freaked us out. Um, so yeah, but like a month after that, we moved out because it was like really horrifying.
Yeah, that sounds really unnerving.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like one of the more scary ones. One of the more lighthearted ones I think I would say is even in this house, actually, we have what's called, I think, like a watcher or a shadow person. And we had so many experiences of like in our basement, our laundry room, they will like kind of peek out around the door and just see what we're doing. And my boyfriend always sees them. I've only seen it like twice. Um, but it's like a little child size. And then sometimes it's a really, really tall person, like abnormally tall. And they just kind of like peek around and see what you're doing and like just kind of hang out. Um, and it's unnerving because like you'll be sitting on the couch in the basement on your computer and you look up and then like this little dark shape of a head peeking out and then it's gone. So I've had that quite often too, and I can't figure out what exactly they want, but they always seem to be like just interested in what you're doing, and then they go away.
Do they feel like malicious or nefarious in any way?
Um, there was something here that did feel malicious at one point, but I actually had my friend Corey send an energy that he works with through the astral to come escort it out and put up protections, because that was one thing that was like very disrespectful. It would constantly cross boundaries we'd lay down, like we don't care if you're here, it's totally fine, but please don't do these few things to us and we're okay with it. And it would constantly cross those boundaries, it would touch and poke, and then it would start like copying our voices, which is really creepy. So I'd be sitting in my room here editing with my headphones on, and my boyfriend would be down in the basement working out, and he would either hear myself or his son, and his son's at his like dad's. So it was freaky in that instance, and we didn't like that. So I had my friend Corey come, and he had me do an offering to the spirit that he worked with, and cleared that out. But the energies with the shadow people, they're more just like curious and like um interested, but they don't really seem to like want to even like interact. They just want to stand and like it feels like they're studying almost, which is uncomfortable, but they tend to like come and go on their own, but they don't really like overstep lines, which is okay,
Mm-hmm.
you
Interesting.
know.
I don't think I've had that experience. I mean, not that consciously that I know of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like we were having a movie night one night and I've only ever seen them in the house, but I look up to the right of me and they're like out in the garden outside of my sliding window. Um and
And
then
do they have features or it's just a shadow?
it's just like a shadow, like a strange outline of like a human body.
Huh.
And sometimes their body proportions are just like incredibly off, so like the one would be really tall or its neck would be abnormally long compared to everything else, and it makes me feel like aliens sometimes, but like I don't know. So it makes me worry because I always feel like I've been in that situation too, where I was like attempted to be abducted. I don't think I've ever said this to anyone, but I feel like I was like dropped into my bed because I just didn't want to go peacefully. I had that experience myself too.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
um, yeah, I was like 15. And this is why I'm like really careful of how I set up my room. And I don't know if it has a correlation to anything, but I find every time I set up my room in a certain like layout, weird things will happen. Maybe it's because I'm more like um, exposed to different energies and I'm more aware of it at that time. But I had moved my bed into a different position in my room. So I was facing my door with my feet towards the door. And I don't sleep like that anymore. I have to be alongside the room. Otherwise, I have weird instances. But I had weird dreams about like ships and just like gray energies,
Hmm.
not even like full forms of body, but like just kind of like mists and energy, like like energetic feelings of like grayness. And I just remember like feeling cold, and I'm very argumentative. I don't know maybe if that's why it was okay and I was all right with it, but I ended up feeling like I just got like dropped, but more so, you ever feel like when you're waking up and you're feeling like you're falling through your bed? Have you ever had that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, except for I bounced off my bed and I landed on the floor. So,
Huh.
yeah, and I had been like asleep for a few hours. So that freaked me out, and got me like looking into like what that might have been, and that's when I kind of like first like really understood energies of like
Mhm.
alien races. So that was a thing that happened.
Yeah. Interesting. I've no, I can say I've never had that experience before.
Yeah. A lot of my experiences aren't like the most settling. They're not um as magical as I would like them to be. And I think that's why I look into it a lot, because I want to understand it and learn how to protect against it, because
Right.
I feel like as a kid I was so open to everything. I was able to somehow let everything in without really knowing the consequences of that. So
Yeah, I would understand that being in your shoes as well.
yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
another story of animals? I want to kind of like lift the mood.
Yeah, yeah. So let me see. I guess I'll talk about I moved I moved to Northern California at one point and lived in a house that um with a bunch of roommates um and I had two cats at the time um and so I had this room that had like a little it was like the door, a little tiny, like short hallway area that, and then it opened up into the square room. And so um, every night I would go to bed with my cats in the room and you know, we'd fall asleep and they'd be in bed with me. Anyway, this one night I had fallen asleep, or I was on the way to falling asleep, and I heard this like, you know, when cats get like really playful and kind of get into that like cat craziness where they start like darting around and like
Yeah.
making a lot of like noise, like darting noises when the
Hmm.
um so that was the sound that I heard. It was like coming from the door and running into the room, and I was like, Nolan is at it again. And I was like, Nolan, shh. And he kept doing it. He kept running from the door like straight into the room, doing the, you know, the crazy cat stuff. And I was like, what is he doing? And I shushed him a couple times. And then at one point I was like frustrated and I was like, dude, and I sat up in bed and I was like, what are you doing? And I looked down and both cats were on either side of me. It wasn't,
Oh, oh, what?
yeah.
That's crazy.
And it stopped after that, of course. Um, but I was like,
What happened? Who was that?
it wasn't scary, you know, it was, I did not feel like it was a scary thing at all. It felt really neutral, like benign,
Mhm.
you know. Um, but um, but that I had absolutely no idea um who that was. I mean, it was clearly I think it was a cat. I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know for sure, but it had cat movements or sounds. So
Yeah, it's just
it
like
was a
maybe
cat.
a passed on animal just playing or trying to get your cat's attention. Let's play, guys.
I know. And that room was weird. It had I mean there were other, now that I'm thinking about it, there were other things that were kind of strange that happened in that room too. That was the only time that we had that visitor, um but I had a stereo at the time. Um and and I had this little remote control that I had by my bed for it because the stereo was on the other side of the room. So I would go to sleep either listening to music or some kind of radio show or something. Um and again, in that sort of liminal space, so much happens in that liminal space. I'd be like half asleep and be like, okay, I got to turn off the stereo. And twice this happened where I picked up the remote, press the button, power off the stereo. Second I put it down, stereo pops right back on again.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it was weird. And
Huh.
I didn't know what that was either because it was off, like powered off and then came back on. So I don't know if there's, I mean, it could have been maybe some weird glitch with the remote. I mean, this is me rationalizing it out in a very,
Yeah.
mundane way too. But um those are like the few weird experiences that I had um there particularly. And when I moved to San Francisco, like for the first 6 weeks of my time there, I just had jaw-dropping deja vu back to back. I'd feel it like 8 times a day where I'd be like, I've been here before. I don't know what's going on. This is really weird. It would stop me in my tracks. And so I've noticed it happened to me too when I moved to Los Angeles as well. Like it wasn't as intense, but there was a short period of time. I think it was like a 2-week period of time where I was like, this feels familiar.
Mm.
Like I've been here before, and it's always in the transition points where I for some reason get like, I think what it is I'm in an unknown place, so I don't have markers, so I'm reaching out further than my own boundaries or whatever to try and find something familiar.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. That's the only thing I've come up with anyway. But
Oh, yeah, I have not met someone else who has had deja vu to that extent, like myself. I used to get it a lot when I was in high school, so much to the point where like we'd have a completely new subject we were learning about. I had never learned about it like before, but like knew exactly what the teacher was gonna say. I'm like, we did this yesterday, and she's like, I literally just came up with it last night, so no. Um, or I'd have like instances of like something gonna happen like later on the day. I had like dreamt it, I guess, and then I go live through it like word for word, and even me going, "Oh, that's weird. I feel like I've done this before." Me saying that was also a deja vu thing. So
yeah,
yeah, it's such a weird thing. I wonder what it is.
no, I don't know what it is either. But I definitely, like here and there I'll have a day or something where it crops up again that intensely, but it's not for that length of time. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I've heard like people sometimes say that they think it means it's a sign that you're on the correct path, the more you have it, or that you're you're getting on to the right path and it's like a sign. So I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another experience I had was it's kind of like another shadow person experience. I used to work at a like horse and tack place.
Hmm.
So you'd sell like the saddles, but also the clothing for it. And it was in a mall, so you'd have to like come from the mall entrance and go all the way to the back to turn the lights on,
Mm.
which I hated because you have to go past all the jean bunks and everything, and you can't see, and it's dark, and you're by yourself. Um, and I had started feeling like more like there was someone in the room. Like I was like, did someone like lock someone in here? Because I just feel like there's more energy here than normal. And that
Mm.
had happened for like about a week or so. And then even during the day, I would feel it in different areas where I'm like, is there someone there? And I turn around and there was no one. And there was this one day I had been like putting the clothes away. It was midday, and I came around the jean bunk, and I'm short, like I'm 5'1", so like they're always above me. I come around, so I didn't see anyone standing there. And then there was this man who is a shadow, but he had like a cowboy hat on, and he had like those riding coats. If you ever seen those, they're like the waterproof, long, leathery coats.
Mm.
And but his like bottom half was gone, and it was just shadow. So all I saw was up to like his torso. Um, and like I felt like I was like kind of like stuck there for a moment, like maybe like comprehending what was happening.
Yeah.
But it felt longer than like a few seconds. And then suddenly I realized I'm walking down the hallway again, and I just have like the memory of it happening pop up in my brain. So it's like, I don't know if someone's like, don't remember me, go that way. And then somehow it just didn't work. But I felt like I was like, shoot off. And it's like, don't remember this. This is weird. You didn't see me. I didn't see you. So that was strange.
Yeah. That sounds strange.
Yeah, I've
That
had a lot of those weird things just pop up like that.
yeah. Do you feel like that they're trying to like send any kind of message or anything? Like they're trying to communicate anything to you?
I feel like because I was so shut down with those like functional abilities and stuff, that maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but the more I allow myself to open up to these things, I feel like more and more I might be one of those conduits that is able to do that for people, and maybe that's why they reach out so much. Um,
Mhm.
and I think I was just more so just too scared to enter that. And this is like more validating now because just in the last few weeks I've been starting to be able to audibly hear things, and
Mm,
I haven't been like working on it at all. I used to always get like the ringing in the ear, and I would just like push it off as like tinnitus or whatever it was called. And but it'd always be on the same side, on the right hand side, and it would usually like follow like with more like intrusive knowings as opposed to thoughts. Like they weren't my thoughts, but they were just like knowing of situations.
mm,
And my mom had passed away this last year, and I've never experienced anything like this before. But just even this week, I've heard her voice like three
mm,
times now, and my boyfriend's seen her. He has a lot of ability to see,
mm,
and yeah, so I know she's here and is reaching out, and I think me being able to hear it is me just trusting the person who's helping me open up those senses. So, like, even just last night, I heard her voice twice, and I felt the touch when I was laying in bed, like a
mm,
comforting feeling. So that
mm,
was really cool. I think that's one of like the most positive experiences I've had.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate. I feel like that's something that I've sort of realized that I have too, which is the audio um messages. You know, I didn't realize that that was something that I was tapping into, but only in the last couple of years I'm like, oh, I actually do have that. I didn't realize it. Um
That's so cool.
yeah, and it started really with my dog, who was really sick for about 15 months. And he would stay up. I mean, as dogs get older, they can be more nocturnal. And that was definitely the case with him. He was just up at night. And so he would bark, he would go through period, he would just bark essentially in the middle of the night. And so I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. And so I'd be hovering again in that liminal space between awake and asleep. And I'd feel like I'd hear him bark in that space when he wasn't barking. There was a lot of like audio stuff going on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and um and I that kind of like started waking me up to, oh, I think I'm actually hearing, because I started hearing sentences too come through in that
Oh,
space.
wow.
And I was like, oh, I can't remember them, but I think I'm like, I either my brain is going crazy or I'm actually picking up like, the antenna has like gone up and is now like one of the functions.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like you're one of the few people who can say that they've heard like possible like thought forms from their animals.
Oh, maybe. Interesting. I
Mm.
hadn't thought of it that way.
You don't know, it could be something that's external, but maybe it would have been like a thought from your animal. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of believe in people being able to communicate with animals on that level too. I know my
Oh,
cousin was like that when she was younger. She would tell me stories about like what the animals were thinking, and later on I'd have a confirmation of kind of like their behavior of what they wanted. So it was interesting.
that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, uh, yeah, I also like in that space. I had this is part where I had the conversation with somebody who gets this too, and they were convinced that um like in that space, because I was sort of half awake, half asleep a lot with my dog, I also started getting really like hyper intense visuals of faces. I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, that person's so interesting. And that was
Oh,
always like the feeling I had. And they'd be talking or like trying to make a point, but I never quite grasped what they said.
wow.
Um, but somebody else had mentioned that, and they were like, yeah, those are spirits trying to like send a message. And I was like, because they had mentioned it in passing, I was like, wait a second, I get those intense, like super clear images of faces too,
Whoa.
like and they were like, yeah, those are spirits, that are like trying to communicate. And I was like, oh, but I haven't been, because I'm not now in that space anymore where I'm like hovering in between, you know the awake and dream space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting them so much. So I haven't been able to play at, like, who wants to be awake in the middle of the night for 5 hours.
No one really.
No. um but but that's sort of the part I was telling you about, that I'm like questioning. I'm like, is this something that I'm picking up on that I just didn't realize
Oh,
is
I think so.
another like way of connecting.
Oh, that's so crazy. It's so interesting hearing you say all those things because I haven't like gotten the visual, but I was going to ask you before you said that story if you had experienced a lot of the like very clear audio. For a while there, I was afraid as a teenager that I was more like needing maybe medical intervention with like certain like mental illnesses because my family has a bit of history with like bipolar and such. So I was like hearing people's like full sentences or even full conversations within like the space I was in when I'd
Mhm.
go to bed. Like my family would be in bed. I could hear my grandma's TV, which was external, um, but she would be watching TV or eating, and there would be no one up, and it would be people's voices I've never heard before.
Mhm.
And sometimes I would get flashes of like not very clear images, but sometimes it'd be scary images or like patterns and stuff like that would kind of like be thrown into my face, and like to the point where sometimes I couldn't sleep because like all I could do was focus on like the things flashing in front of me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it was like it's a weird thing. I was just wondering if you've ever experienced anything like that. So,
Yeah, well, so when I was a kid, I went through, until I was about 10 years old, I had, every time I would go to bed, falling is like, winding down and the body going into sleep mode, I would look into the dark and see patterns
mhm.
in the dark. They were always geometric patterns that were kind of floating by. It was always, and I don't, I mean, I can just, I don't know what that was. I found it very comforting. It was sort of like, oh, this is the thing that happens before we go to sleep. And it was always a nice feeling, like a peaceful feeling.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that's the only thing that I can like relate to being a kid and seeing things. In terms of audio, I never got any audio with it. Um, but I did, there was one time where I did have a dream, or I thought was a dream. It wasn't a dream. It was, so I again, half asleep, half awake, I think. It was probably some kind of lucid dream situation. I'm not sure. But I knew that there were a couple people like at the end of my bed having an intimate conversation, and I couldn't
Hmm.
hear exactly what they were saying, but I felt their presence. They were there, just talking as if like they were on a street corner, like, but it happened to be the end of my bed. And I sort of like woke up, like I sat up in bed fully expecting to see them there, and they weren't.
Huh.
Um, but I was like, I I know they were like, I know they were there. I mean, unless I totally was dreaming it. But at the same time, like dreams, you do communicate with other entities in dreams. So
Mhm.
in some way, there was some weird communication thing happening
That's
at the point
cool.
too. Um, Again, it didn't feel at all scary to me. It was just like these two were, people were hanging out in passing, and just it was the place to be. I don't know.
Your bed is just comfortable for them, I guess. It's better than an actual bench somewhere.
Yeah.
I've had that one experience, maybe once or twice, where I've been laying in bed. I was literally like actively thinking about something, getting comfortable, and I'd have like a depression into my bed, like next to me.
Oh.
And I'd be like, not exactly sure what it was because I wasn't hearing or seeing anything other than my bed moving down, like someone sitting down. I had like a feeling it might have been my great grandmother, because it was
Mm.
around the time that she had passed, but I couldn't like hear anything or anything like that at that time. So yeah, that was a freaky moment for me too. I also had one instance with an animal. So my dog Buddy, um, he was a Bichon Frise slash large poodle. So he was like very short but long,
Mhm.
and he'd always sit on my foot for like a protective thing when he was alive, and we had to put him down because he was really old and getting like really sick. He actually had like um tummy cancer, so he was like not going through a lot of like positive at the time. He was in a lot of pain, so we gave him like his like one of his last days. We gave him all his favorite things, and of course that morning he was like a puppy again. He was running around, so it made it harder because he knew he'd go into those lapses again and not be himself, and he'd be in pain. So it was hard to like want to take him to the vet, but we had, and we were just waiting for everything to be processed. And I was sitting in the living room and I was talking to my grandmother, and I just felt him sit on my foot.
Mm.
So, and there was nothing there. It's just me and her in the living room. And I felt the warmth too.
Mm.
And his tail kind of like batting my leg. So I was like, that's cool. He's still here. So I just talked to him. I'm like, you can follow me everywhere I go. Just
Aw.
because I knew I was moving soon around that time. I'm like, just follow me everywhere. So yeah, that was a sweet moment.
Yeah. It sounds like it. I've had a couple of moments similar to that. I think my cat Snick passed away in March of 2020, and he was 19 years and 3 months. And
Wow.
yeah, and I was missing him hard. I had to put him down, and I was missing him hard. Um and I remember he used to curl up in like when I was asleep, he would curl up in my stomach, my
Oh,
torso, underneath the covers. It was really cute. And
cute.
yeah. And one night I was missing him, and I was like, Snick, I need you.
Oh,
And I felt him like curl up in the crook of my stomach. And that's the only time, there's only one time, but I was like, he's still around, he's still here.
yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that story.
Yeah. I forgot about my dog. The dog I grew up with, he passed away when I was in college. And um And I remember being at home and pottering around and doing, my normal activities, like, I don't know, brushing my teeth, that kind of stuff, when getting ready for bed or putting on some makeup or something in the morning. And he used to sit at the top of the stairs. There was just, his spot was right at the top of the stairs because the door was down the stairs and at the bottom, and there was a little window so he could kind of see like what was happening outside.
Oh.
Um, and he would always wait for my mom because he was, he'd follow her around. Um, and so if I was home, that was just his place. And I remember, you know, after he had passed, I was in the bathroom doing my routine or whatever, um, and I remember thinking to myself, I just heard him sigh, but I didn't actually like. I remember thinking it, but I didn't actually like think, oh, he's still here, you know?
Yeah.
And there was another time where I was like, I just heard him click by with his nails like on the floor, you know? Um and so those are a couple things that I think back now on and be like, I remember noting those things, but for some reason I didn't put two and two together at the time. I was just like, I don't know. I just thought I was hearing things or something, you know?
Yeah.
Um but it reminds me of that too.
Oh, that's cute. Sometimes I think our current dog, we share kind of like housel like custody of him. So half the time he's here and then half the time he's with my boyfriend's son at his dad's, and uh he I feel like he sometimes sees my dog um because he's a little chihuahua, and he's scared of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're close up and you'll play with him, he's happy with you until he's scared of you until he like you interact with him, and then he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's one time like I could tell he noticed and like was cognizant of something coming through like my living room sliding doors, but my doors were shut. Like he noticed it and followed it along and got mad, and then he like wagged his tail and like did like that play thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then he just kind of like laid there like wagging his tail at something. So I like to think that that was Buddy visiting. So yeah,
That's sweet.
yeah, it's really cute. But yeah, we've had a lot of those experiences too. I know like my boyfriend's had a few experiences where Gizmo would, in their old place before we had met, he would pick up on something and you just stare at it. And I think we all have had our animals do that before, where they're like not sure of something, but they're like looking at it, it freaks you out a little bit inside. But yeah, he's had a lot of that too. So yeah, I think I wish I could tap into his visuals because that's something I do want to eventually be able to do, is be able to see. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think what stops me is like, what if I see scary? I just want to see what I want to see. I know you can't
Yeah.
really control that, but
Yeah. Yeah. There's yeah, animal communication like that is interesting. I've read a few books on how to do that, and I've, practiced a bit um on sending visuals to them.
Mhm.
I can't say that I knew that I was picking up on any visuals coming back, but I've had some interesting experiences. One in particular that actually, it's funny that you brought this up because I'm actually planning, one of my next couple of videos is actually going to be on this topic. So I want to
Oh.
save the story for the video, um but there's definitely something there in terms of like being able to communicate other than just like, I don't know, body language.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a whole level of communication just with the emotional output that you bring. I know, not related to animals, but like I would, when I couldn't get someone to like get a hold of me or they wouldn't answer their phone, I would send out like a mental thing to them, like just call me like right now. And it was like my last ditch thing to get their attention. But most often they would call me or be like, I thought about calling you around this time, but I was busy. I'm like, yeah, I wanted you to call me. You should have just done it.
Yeah. I definitely get those moments too where I like think of somebody and then they call, or I don't know which way it's going, if they're thinking of me first or I'm thinking of them and sending the message, but there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. um yeah, like that's most of my stories for the most part. I know a lot of them are really scary. I had one, I think this is like the most scary one I had. So I was still living in my grandparents' home, but I had moved to the basement and I had never liked the basement. I think like most people, they're always like when they leave the basement, they feel like something's chasing them. I don't know what it is about basements, but they're just creepy. And I had moved into that basement bedroom, and my ex was living with us for a while, and we had broken up, and he got kicked out, and it felt like because he wasn't there, something was trying to like be trying something negative on me, trying to get my attention, and I had this little makeup case that I got from like shoppers, and it would fold up and have like the clasps, so you'd have to like latch it.
Hmm.
Um, and I had it full of my body paints because I was really into body painting back then. And I had just finished, and I was up really late. I had just washed everything off and kind of left everything open.
Hmm.
So the case was half open with paints in it, and it was one of those where it like had like the drawers that would like stack open as you open the case.
Hmm.
Um, so I was laying in bed, and it was about like 3 or 4, and I heard the case go slam shut, and I didn't move because I was freaked out. I wasn't sure what was happening, and then I heard the clasp click closed, click open, click closed, and then I was like, okay, that wasn't just like the case being half open and closing. Now it's like a confirmed like movement thing. Um, so that had freaked me out, and I had talked to my grandma on my mom's side, and she didn't live with me, but she is really religious, and she like told me about like this prayer that I could read.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was the Lord's Prayer or what, but I had read it, and I read it a couple of times in my room because I was too scared to leave the room.
Hmm.
Um, because I always felt like something was coming in towards me, like pushing in. And then, like on the outside of my door is like our sewing room, like laundry room area. And something started like getting mad, and like paper towels were flying, and one of the bleach bottles flew off the shelf. I didn't know what it was because I just heard a bunch of clanging. So I opened the door, and like all this stuff had fallen off the shelf, like the time that I had like just finished my reading.
Hmm.
And so obviously it was mad, and then it was kind of gone, but I could feel like it was like still there but back further.
Hmm.
So that was the first time I experimented with like energy shielding.
Hmm.
I didn't know how to like use my energy properly at the time to ground and center and pull energy from anything.
Hmm.
So I used it for myself. And I sat on the edge of my bed, and I kind of did like a netting across my room with different like
Hmm.
straps and stuff. And I could feel it coming out of the back of my neck, and up and around, through my forehead. But I felt like a truck hit me the next day, because it was so exhausting. Um, and I learned kind of at that point how long those things last too, because for a while it went away. And then there was an instance where 1 month it came around, and I feel like it had worn off, and I should have updated it because I felt like it was trying to like, it sounds like those creepy movies where you watch where they were trying to like take over you. Like,
Hmm.
and it didn't feel like sleep paralysis because I could hear my voice, but it wasn't mine, which
Hmm.
is terrifying. Um, so the only thing I could do was just like say that prayer over and over again. Um, and then slowly my voice shaped back to myself. Um, And during that period, I couldn't really move. But the second that I was able to, I shot out of bed in like 3.2 seconds. I was upstairs in the living room and I stayed up there. I wouldn't sleep in my room for several days because it was, I think it's probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like it. It
Yeah.
sound I'm it you actually have quite a few scary stories.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of what I am interested in is because I'm looking for protection, like I said. And
Yeah.
um, I don't know if it's because like I have abilities that I'm not like knowing how to control, or if it's because I I believe in certain things. Like my grandmother likes to say, like, if you entertain it, it will come kind of
Mhm,
thing. But I don't really fully believe in that either because before I even knew what those things were, they were showing up
mhm,
unannounced and wreaking havoc. So um yeah, I think that's why I'm like interested in learning all these things so I can learn how to like understand what it is and how to deal with it. Like I'm pretty sure we had like what's called a brownie in my home in this house. Um and it was just causing like chaos, but like not in a negative way. It was more mischievous um and irritating. It would run up and down our stairs and like my stepson would be sleeping completely comatose, and his room's on the other side of this, like behind me.
mhm,
And I would hear because we have a spiral staircase, kind of that goes like half and around this wall, and I would hear it run up the stairs and then hit the landing and then run up again, and then I'd have like a small moment where I guess it would be passing through our doorway, and then it would go hitting on our headboard while we were trying to meditate. Like we have our Calm app open and we're meditating to go to bed, and it's like, don't forget me, I'm annoying, and like I just want to mess with you right before you go to bed. And or it would hit like the floorboard, what's it called, the trimming, um and tap on it, and it was freaky as heck.
How did you get it to go to stop or to go away?
I think it was like kind of ushered out with the entity that came into the house to help
Oh,
cleanse the other thing.
mhm,
Because I know there was like several energies that were like kind of here and there. Um, I don't know if it was like the brownie or something else that was doing this, but when I first met my boyfriend, he, you know, the sound of like clothes dropping on the floor, like on a hard surface, just like that thump
mhm,
sound. It was kind of like that, which is so strange and like out of it. Like I don't know why it chose to do that thing, but it would like drop clothes and it would cut closer and closer and closer to you. So the sound would get gradually closer. And that was like the first time when we had first started dating, he'd called me. He's like, can you just come over? I am uncomfortable. I'm by myself. And so I got in a cab and I just came across the city and I was like, yep, I'm gonna sage everything. And I brought oils and stuff. And it would just kind of like put it at bay, but it would still be around and it would last okay for a couple days and then it would come back, and it would do that. So I'm thinking maybe now that I'm thinking about it, it could have been the brownie because it was more of like a patronizing, irritating kind of energy.
mhm,
um or it would like stand in the landing of the basement stairs and like creak the floor, and it's the exact spot where like if you stood there it would creak but nowhere else on the floor it would creak, so you could feel the weight shift and hear it.
mhm,
um and it just make you uncomfortable.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that it would. I mean, anything in your space that you can't see, or even if you can see it, can be uncomfortable to have.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't know if I still have the photo, but we would play with Snapchat filters sometimes when we were having a celebration day, and excuse me, we would maybe like having a few drinks or whatever, and we'd be playing with the filters. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I think it's been online. A few people would have it like the filter would pop up and there's no face there, but it would be recognizing something. It'd be
Hmm,
like a blank wall, but it's still
interesting.
recognizing something. And so I deleted the app because it just freaked me out. So it would have a filter and it could have a partner, but like there's just you in the room with no faces around you, not even a photo. So like that freaked me out. If I still have it, I'll like put it into the description. But it was like one of those bear filters, and it was just like going through the filters, pointing it towards our laundry room door,
Mhm.
and the filter had picked up something, and it was just our plain door. There's
Yeah.
like literally nothing on the walls or anything to recognize as a face, and
Huh.
it
Weird.
had done that a couple times, and we always hated that area because it was our laundry room door and like the under the stairs storage door, and we'd always feel like something like in that area. So it was weird to like actually see it like pick something up.
Interesting. Yeah, I live in a house that it was bought after the tenant moved. Sorry, not moved, passed away.
Mhm.
And he was an old man. And sometimes I think that he lingers here and that he's doing things like opening cabinet doors, or I have his bedroom, like his master bedroom. So um I think that's probably also where he passed away.
Mm.
And I always, I remember like the first time walking into the house being like, I don't know, there's something weird about this room. I'm not 100% comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Not enough so that I like won't walk into it. And as it's become more mine, it feels better,
Mhm.
but there's still moments where I'm just like, I don't know, there's something about this room that I don't know what it is. Can't
Just
quite
not
put my
comfy.
finger on it. Yeah, that like an area, a space that I'm just like, I don't, I don't love being in it.
Oh, that sucks. Because
It,
your room is supposed to be like your space out of everything in the house. It's like yours. So
yeah,
that's why I want to do fuming. I think I mentioned in the last episode what we did together. I was like, I want to do energetic fuming and customize the space just because I feel like if you leave it too long, sometimes things kind of like pass through and leave energies, and I just kind of want to tell my space like what I want, just because I've had a lot of those experiences where I feel too many energies and I just want a place to just come home where like I know there's nothing that's gonna overstimulate me.
yeah.
Like this is why I also wanted to like start like experimenting with veiling. So like when I do leave the house, I wear a toque or something because I don't want all the overstimulation. Or at work, I wear a baseball cap that we get, just because I feel like it helps suppress a lot of like the
Mhm.
energies that are around. I work at a grocery store, so there's lots of people all the time, a lot of stimulation externally, and
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's important to have like that safe space to come into. So
yeah, yeah. I've gone through with, a smoke cleanse in it, and there isn't anything that's like that I can say is perturbing. It's not like something specific. It's just like a weird, I don't know. Just sometimes it just feels uncomfortable to be in there. I'm like, I just don't want to be in there right now.
yeah, I feel like someone's using this room right now, and I it's gonna go over here.
Yeah.
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 Oh, I love our conversations. It's always like something so interesting that makes me think about it. Think about something in a different way.
Yeah, me too. They're always fun too. I'm trying to think. I do have two two more. I wrote them down so I wouldn't
Okay.
forget. Two more
Awesome.
stories if you want them.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, um I I mean, and this is so my neighbor, her dog passed away, and whenever I would walk by with my dogs, I always feel like I always be like, is that Missy in the yard? And it wasn't because she didn't exist anymore. But I always had like felt like I caught her right out of the corner of my eye
Hmm.
whenever we walk by. It's a tiny story, but Um, but I don't know what I mean, it wasn't like a direct viewing of her, but always that sense of like, boop, like,
So she's there for a moment.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. I like that.
yeah. She was a really sweet dog, and it was it was always something that, and her owner was also, really upset about her
Yeah.
passing. And it was always something I was like, should I tell her that, or is that just gonna freak her out? I'm not sure.
Yeah. She's just gonna be more sad about it, or is it gonna be comforting? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one, so I had a dog. It's so weird. I had my last dog, Morley. He passed away over the summer, and I only had him for 2 years. And I had another dog who I only had for 2.5 years, named Mobley.
Oh.
Um, and they were actually kind of similar looking, like same size dogs, same coloring. They both had German Shepherd in them, so like, there's just a similar look about them. But and they had the same name, not same, but like one letter
Similar.
removed. Yeah. Um, anyway, so Mobley passed away in 2018, and November 30th, 2018. Um, and I had, I was in my hard grief period after that. And I remember asking him, I was like, if you're still around, can you please show up? I just need to see that you're still here. Um and that night I woke up, holy shit. I remember this actually happened 3 nights in a row, and then stopped. But um I woke up at like 4 a.m. to light coming out of my little living room area, because my bedroom area was right, the door opened onto the living room area. And right next to, I can show you what I had right next to
Awesome.
the door. Um, so right next to my bedroom door, but on the living room side, were these, which are sticks that light up.
Pretty.
They're very temperamental, and so I don't turn them on that often. They're working now, but um, these things can be very temperamental and not work at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, um, so I had these right outside of my door, and I woke up at 4 a.m. to these on, and I hadn't touched them in months.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, and I knew once I woke, I was like, why is the light on? And I was like, it's Mobley. Like, I asked him to show up, and it's Mobley.
Oh.
And they went off by themselves at some point because I went back to sleep. They were off in the morning. Next night, the same fucking thing.
Oh,
Next night
wow.
after that, same fucking thing. And I was like, it is Mobley. That is like, without a doubt, I just knew. Like, and it never happened after that again. Like, so
Holy.
that was my fun story. That's my fun, like interaction of asking him to show and
Yeah.
coming.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I like that story. It makes me want to reach out myself because I haven't like physically like asked something to come visit me again. I've only kind of like been waiting for them to show up, and
Mm.
sometimes I don't like to admit it, but a little offended that they don't come to like see me. But sometimes maybe I just wasn't open to seeing it, right? So maybe I should ask them to like show up for a little bit and say hi or see me in a dream or something. Because I've only ever had my grandfather come in a dream, which is really weird. It was like he was taking us on a field trip in the astral. We were
Mm.
going on a bus. He never went on buses. He drove trucks, and he had like a yellow truck he called Old Yeller. It was rusty and an old junk truck, but he loved that thing. And for some reason, we were going on a bus, and the moon was out, and all of our family members were there. Um, so it was weird because like we would never do those kind of things. He was more of a uh, show up with action, kind of like showing he loved you kind of thing. It wasn't like he would tell you, and like he would just do his gardening and watch a lot of his sports and stuff, but he wasn't more of like a let's go do things kind of person. So it was interesting to see that happen. And I've only ever seen I think actually saw my boyfriend before we met as a silhouette. I couldn't tell who it was. I could feel the energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um and have I had anyone else? I don't think I've had anyone else show up in a dream. My cousin saw my uncle Donnie in a mirror the year he passed at Christmas. So he was with us.
Wow.
Yeah. But it makes me like want to reach out a little bit more. Maybe it's because they're just respecting me not asking.
Yeah, I definitely have when I ask to see more often than not, it's usually comes in a dream, rather than like something physical. But yeah, when my cat Snick passed, I I was communicating with him for a bit afterwards, and I actually had him. I was having issues with my neighbor, who's just anyway. I was having issues with him, and he was leaving and like dead animal bodies and stuff outside the
Ew.
trash cans. And yeah, and he's just he drinks a lot and
Mm.
not a well person. And um anyway, he has cats, and that he loves cats. I think he has two or three of them. And so in that time period, I was like, maybe Snick can like communicate with him in some way to get him to chill out, and so I was like, I asked Snick, I was like, hey, can you go check him out and see if you can just get him to stop harassing. um and and that night I had a dream, um and Snick came to me, and he was like, he didn't speak to me, but he communicated to me. I went around, I walked out in my dream, I walked out around my house and found Snick like hanging upside down from the roof, like the underside of the roof, overhang of the roof. And
Yeah.
I remember reaching up and pulling him down and holding him, and he communicated to me that he wasn't able to break through, like he was like a little bit freaked out. He was like, I'm not hurt, but like that was very uncomfortable to do. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm so sorry, buddy. Like,
Oh.
I won't ever have you do that again. Thank you.
He was still trying to protect you. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Oh.
He's he's still around. Like he's still, like I said in our last conversation in the astral, like he's the first one that comes and greets me and is like, "Hey, mommy," or
Oh.
whatever. I love you.
Oh. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that he like even not being physically here anymore, he's able to still try to like show up for you and be there for you. It's a really pretty story.
Yeah, he was such a love. Like he was disabled, so he had something called cerebellar hypoplasia, which animals can get if their mother gets something like distemper while she's pregnant, or if she has like a some sort of like bodily physical injury.
Mm.
um, the animals, the babies, the fetuses, um, their cerebellum doesn't develop quite right, and so they come out having balance issues.
Oh.
Yeah, so he and his brother both came, well, actually there were three of them, and all three came out with balance issues, but he was the worst. And so he kind of walked around like he was on a rocking ship, like,
Oh.
and he just because he needed me, and because like more for me than a normal cat would, it
Mhm.
just created a very strong bond between us, and it was sort of like his, I don't know, helper, at the
Aw.
same time. So but he was such a love, and also alpha, very alpha. He was
Ooh, wow.
he was love and super, he was like mine.
This is
I'm
my
first.
mom.
Yeah.
I am
Or
first child.
I'm getting fed first, mine.
Oh, what a sweetie. Oh, I
Yeah.
loved your story so much. Makes me want to just sit down and reach out a little bit more. And I think I might do that this week because it's the perfect time for it.
Yeah.
The Samhain coming. Such a cool time for those things to be happening and me hearing audibly and stuff like that. It's really cool. So I might just turn around after this and do some journaling. I have my tarot book there, so I might do that for a little bit. Thank you so much for joining me and telling me all your stories. I really enjoyed our
Yeah.
combo.
Yeah. I would love to do more if it's, seems appropriate. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
definitely.
lovely chatting with you too.
For sure. And I'll definitely do more paranormal stuff throughout the year too. Because it's just something I'm interested in too. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me.
Yeah. No problem, Rhiannon.
All right, have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.